been on the socials for quite some time. So we hardly see each other anymore.
I
Same here, man.
know.
Really excited to see you.
Lovely to see you too. Thank you.
Lovely, lovely. You let me know when to start, Sonia.
Yes, I will start. I'll introduce you first. We'll give people a couple of minutes to log on. There's Guillaume.
Oh, fantastic.
Hello.
Hey,
Hello,
Guillaume.
Hi, Guillaume. How are you?
Hello, Muzi. I'm good. Good to see you. It's been a long time.
It's been a very long time, Guillaume, eh?
But I see you've got a nice t-shirt there.
Oh, yeah. You know why I got this shirt on? Because I begged and begged and begged and begged to be on the show today. And then
Michelle.
And then they gave me the t-shirt. Sonia gave me the t-shirt. Like, wipe away your tears with it if you because you've been crying so much. Lovely.
Yes, nice to see you. Nice to see you all.
See you too, man.
So we'll just give a couple of more minutes. But feel free to chat amongst yourselves. This is the RIM way, the informal way of sharing dialogue around these very important issues.
Well, I'm really excited, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's well, let me keep quiet because I'm going to start talking.
Yeah, hopefully you can come to the conference. You can see what I always think of that.
Yeah.
So who was that man, Sonia? You sent a picture yesterday. That was
he didn't know. I met George Clinton thanks to Vanessa Acom, who's next to you on the thing. I sent you a link of who he is. Guillaume was like, huh? This is the soundtrack to our high school years.
Oh,
soundtrack
nice.
to the 70s.
George Clinton. Okay. I think I've heard that name, but the picture, okay.
Well, he's 82 years old now.
Okay.
So that's okay. We've got
funk musician. Okay.
Can I make you well, I should be able to see people to make sure that I let them in. I should have not done the waiting room. If you see people in the waiting room.
But I cannot let them in. So if you can give me co-hosts or something like that.
Do I do that? Oh, host twos. Okay. Oh, I just took off the waiting room.
Okay, that's cool.
That was a little easier. So we'll get started at exactly 11:05, just 2 minutes. Just want to give people a chance. Make sure that it is recording. Where is the recording feature, Guillaume?
Yes, it's happening. It's happening. When I got in, yes.
Okay,
yes.
It's gone.
This time we're going to be able to record it.
Okay, I'll get started. Hi, Kevin. Get started in 1 more minute. Hello, Rhonda. Ziki, Stephanie. It's good to see people. Okay, 1 more minute. I'll get started. Make sure you all have everything you need. And I even wrote an introduction. It'll be quick.
Hi, Sonia.
Hello, hi, Stephanie. How you doing?
I'm okay. I'm not presentable for the camera and a bunch of things going on in the background.
That's okay. That's the value
engaged.
and the beauty of Zoom.
Love Zoom. I'm engaged, though. I'm looking forward. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to get started. Thank you. We're at 11:04. By the time I get going, it'll be 11:05. So, hello, my name is Sonia Greer, and I'm here to welcome you to our event today. morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where in the world you are joining us from, because we have people from all around the world. And I'm really grateful that you took the time to join us today. I'm really excited to introduce you to our speaker this afternoon for the 5th step in the Race in the Marketplace Stairway to South Africa series. If you're joining us for the first time, the Stairway to South Africa series is a RIM Network initiative that is leading up to our 2025 Research Forum in Cape Town. The series involves activities designed to explore and understand race and markets within the South African context. It is also part of our overall RIM Global Dialogue series, which is exploring issues in race and markets around the world. So our aim is really to support informed and respectful dialogue around issues of race in the marketplace. And if you are watching what's going on worldwide, you know that informed and respectful dialogue is not always easy. So we are happy to do that. And I think today's speaker often makes it sound easy, at least to me. I'm totally excited to introduce our speaker for today, Muzi Kuzwayo. I met Muzi in 1997 when I went to South Africa for a 3-month sabbatical at the University of Cape Town. As I discussed my research plans with people that I was just cold calling or that I met through other people and saying that I wanted to look at issues of race and markets in the South African context, people kept saying, oh, you need to talk to Muzi Kuzwayo. And so I made a point to look him up. Then I'm talking to the woman I rent my apartment from, Barbie. And I tell her about my research and she says, I've got a colleague at Ogilvy and Mather, Muzi Kuzwayo, who you really need to talk to, and I'm going to introduce you to him. And that's how I eventually met Muzi back in 1997. And he has really shared a very nuanced understanding of race and market issues in South Africa and about the diverse population. Since that time I met him, he has led multiple advertising agencies, been a columnist for several newspapers, and most recently founded an organization called South Africa's Promise. And this nonprofit aims to fulfill South Africa's constitutional promise of freeing the potential of each person. Today, Muzi will discuss his vision around issues of race, citizenship, and consumption. So if we could give a warm virtual welcome to Muzi Kuzwayo. Take it away, Muzi, it's yours. So you can share your screen and you turn.
Fantastic. Lovely. Share screen. Share the screen. And bang, off we go. I'm sure you can hear me. Welcome to South Africa. This is where I live right now, Johannesburg. I always travel with a camera, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy Cape Town and truly have a good time there. I was born in a country that no longer exists. I was born during apartheid, which ended on the 4th of May in 1990. And the screen, and what you have in front of you on the screen is a permit, which I got when my mother passed away, when we were going through her things. If you look, it says there, issue 2, Patrick Peacock. You can read that. Tell me if you can't. And it says, Fro wife, Georgina. So I was born in Painville, and Painville was a pre-apartheid township. People lived there regardless of race, blacks and whites and colors. And my mother married a colored man who was later classified as a colored man. This permit, you know, the past laws, the permit was it's something that enforced the past laws. So the police, usually it was a young white guy guarded by a squad of policemen, black policemen, and maybe 2 or 3 other white policemen, older. They would come and knock in the house and then do a stock taking of the people who are inside the house. And if you look there, it says family authorized to reside on stand, but it's written on the Afrikaans side. It's got my name there, Muzi, and my sister Colleen, but they've misspelled it to say Colin. And so when the reclassification of people happened, Patrick Peacock had to be classified colored because there was a pen test where you put your hair, your hair in the pen. So you put a pen in your hair to see how it looks like. Let me see if I can demonstrate it for you. So what basically happened in that whole thing is how they tested if he was supposed to be classified black or colored or not, was they put a pen in there, and if it doesn't fall, if you do that, like it won't fall, then you were classified black. So my stepfather, when they put the pen and it fell, he was classified as colored. So that's how arbitrary it was. Let me continue with the screen. So that country doesn't exist anymore. And then you can see that the months. It was in 1973. So this is another important thing. This house was built by my grandmother and my grandfather. In 1928, they started building the house, and they finished it around 1934. And then in 1936, a new law was passed called the Native Trust and Land Act 18 of 1936. And that act made provision for the establishment of the Native Trust. But if you look at the highlight, what I've highlighted for you is that the act abolished the land ownership by Black people and introduced trust tenure through the creation of the Development Trust. So what basically meant was that the house that my grandmother and grandfather had built with their own hands and money, they had to lose it and was then ceded to their son-in-law, Patrick Peacock. So every month, as I was saying, the police would come and then they would sign, they'd do the stock taking, see who's there. If there was anyone else outside of the two of us, Colleen and I and Georgina and Patrick, then Patrick Peacock would be liable to a fine or jail time that I can't remember. But that person would also be arrested immediately and without any question. And the township in which I was born was demolished. They felt that the reason they gave was that it was too close to white people. So we were then, because of the forced removals, behind this building was my school. The school was also demolished. And so I had to move to another school. And the reason why our school was demolished was because it was a Catholic school and they refused to teach Bantu education. You might see in this document, I'm not sure if I can zoom in, you can see there, it says not transferable, but it's actually in the Bantu Sasaka part of the township. So that was demolished. The township was, and I was moved. I went to, this was the closest school, the Theotwala Primary School. School that I loved, taught us a lot of culture, Zulu culture, African culture at large. I hated the school, I must be honest, the first year, because I knew I lived in a very political family, and I knew why I was there and why our school had been shut down. In 1994, as apartheid was ending, I took a picture of one of the last vestiges of apartheid. You can see we voted on the 27th of April in 1994, and this is on the 5th of April, a ticket that I bought. It was a monthly ticket, and you can see that it says 3 class, which is the 3rd class, which was the non-white section of the train. And I kept these tickets. It's just something about it. So, but soon Johannesburg is going to be invited. Yeah, so that's the first part. Now, what happened when I was at Ogilvy, I'll stop sharing in the meantime so I can engage in the discussion. I then joined Ogilvy, as Sonia was saying, and I got tickets at Cape Town, if you noticed, and I was using it in Cape Town. And what was really sad, or rather really interesting in Cape Town, was the fact that, well, I got into an advertising agency as a media planner, is that while apartheid was out on the street, was basically demolished with all the things, or ended with all the things that had happened, it was still happening inside the marketing space. We classified consumers very crudely and very rudely under white, coloreds, and Indians. That was one group, and basically against Black group. So the Black group was one big blob that just was, had the same interest, was seen as having the same interest, same everything. And this is why people were saying maybe we should meet me, as you were saying, Sonia, because I wrote a book called Marketing Through Mud and Dust that basically objected to that kind of target marketing, where people were seen, the things that were being said in the marketing boardrooms at the time were a naked display of prejudice and negative mythology. I remember an incident where if a client put out a competition and Black people, because of the numbers, responded to a promotion, they'd say, oh, they don't use that product anyway. The reason why they're responding is because they're hoping there'll be something for free. So then there was something that everybody spoke about, just about every brief that everyone wrote said, targeting to upwardly mobile Black people who are very ambitious, who are exhibitionists, that's the word they used to use. They want to show off their money. It was the prejudice that had been ended by law was basically in the marketing strategies. And I remember my boss, Brian Sweltrip, was a very fiery guy that I loved to death. I remember going through a strategy and he said, I've never seen anyone marketing to downwardly mobile people, whether they're Black, white, Chinese, whatever. You stop this nonsense. So I lived in that era where marketers were basically extractionist in many ways than they were in building brands and in building products. There were some who were really good, I must be honest. There were some who saw how products like life assurance, like medical aid, could be used to help develop this new society that was emerging. And there have been some big mistakes. We've made some big mistakes in that I think two things happened when South Africa changed. Firstly, the Soviet Union collapsed, which was, in a way, a celebration in South Africa of the end of communism and socialism. And so this very, for lack of a better term, very super consumerist society that emerged from the West with the East collapsing became the big thing. It became the in thing that everybody bought into. So brands such as, what was upmarket brands were moving more towards people on the lower end of the market who couldn't afford the products that they were buying. And this was very much, to me, in contrast to what I had learned or what I was learning about German advertising and how Germany was using products to rebuild their country. Gunter Quandt of BMW, after you remember during the Second World War, because BMW was supplying Hitler with machinery, with weapons, they made sure that they bombed it into smithereens. He said, we will rebuild our company by rebuilding our country. And I like that kind of thing. And that's what I hope marketing will be, and that's what I think marketing should be in the marketplace. So in South Africa, it was the opposite. We've got high unemployment as we speak. And we did some research last year, social research. One of the things that South Africa is suffering from is high levels of unemployment and emigration of people who are educated. So some of anecdotal evidence from some of my friends who are still in corporates, because I'm doing the foundation on a full-time basis now, they told me that they're losing a lot of Black chartered accountants to New Zealand and to the United Kingdom. So a lot of kids, a lot of new graduates are leaving the country. But what is really sad is that the ones who aren't leaving the country by 11 o'clock in the morning, they're either drunk or on drugs because the country is not giving them any hope. But I do believe that, I was an ardent believer of this even when we first started. I'll tell you a case study with our client, Sowetan and Agri-Cluster. I believed in building a society. And Agri-Cluster was big on what Steve Biko was talking about, on nation building. They were colleagues at some stage. And we built his newspaper, the Sowetan, and one of the biggest life assurance companies, Old Mutual, around nation building. We came up with ideas for Woman of the Year. So people would vote, would choose any community builder in their area, and then have a Woman of the Year award sponsored by Old Mutual. We had choirs. We did a lot of stuff in society that was creating a new culture in society, or expanding the culture that existed pre-apartheid. And unfortunately, with hyper consumerism, with a lot of budgets going into creating vanity, we have lost that. But I have hope. I do have hope that, I always say to people, I don't want to be oppressed by the ghost of apartheid. I don't want to be oppressed by the ghost of that permit that I showed you, or to be oppressed by the ghost of that the pen now falls on my head because my hair has gone thinner because of age. And the only way I can make sure that I'm not oppressed by the ghost of apartheid is by imagining how South Africa, indeed how Africa, will look like 100 years from today. How we can market the idea of a better Africa, where the commodity that not a commodity that we're selling, but the one product that we're selling around the world to Africans and outside of Africa is Ubuntu. You spoke earlier on about the conflicts that we're seeing around the world. What I find particularly interesting, Sonia and everyone else, is that when Kofi Annan was the Secretary General of the UN, they had the least number of armed conflicts since the founding of the United Nations. And if you ask why, it's because we have this one thing that describes, and people say Ubuntu is humanity. No, it's not humanity. Ubuntu is about the essence of being a human being. And it's best defined by what it is not. When people speak in Zulu or in Sesotho, they say, "Hasebo tubo," "Akusubuntu lobo." That's not how human beings behave. And that's the one thing that I hope we're going to sell, because it's a lot deeper than the color of our skin. Thank you. I'd like to take some questions. This was just a setup so we can have a discussion.
Any questions so far? Don't be shy. Anyone? I'm looking to see if there are any hands, or just come off and say.
Okay, I can continue then if there are no questions.
I have a question.
Emma has a
Okay.
question.
Hi there. I love the idea of Ubuntu, and you. Is it that you're thinking Ubuntu it needs to be marketed more widely, or is it that marketing can learn something from Ubuntu?
I think it's got to be marketed a lot more widely. And the reason why I'm saying that it should be so people can know it and feel it and understand it, and hopefully then they will be able to align themselves with it, because it will be. I mean, when we do stuff, I always think when I write as a Black person, my Africanness is in there. I shouldn't try to write African because it is that way. I write with the sayings that I grew up with in mind. For instance, let me just think of an example. I was talking to somebody. I'm trying to think of an example. But everything that I write with the sayings, with the idioms that I grew up with. I'll translate them into English. But so we shouldn't. So it will be in the stuff that we believe in, but in the same way, by the way, that the Catholic Church started marketing when the Pope saw the Protestantism coming up. He started the marketing, the propagation of the faith, which was a marketing organization that lived for something like 6 centuries until last year or 2 years ago in April, when Pope Francis merged it with another organization. it's what went, because when they saw Protestantism coming into their territory, they felt it was necessary for them to go out and propagate this philosophy of Catholicism. And in the same way, I'm saying let's propagate the philosophy of Ubuntu, because that is who we are. The big difference, you know, when we talk opposites, they are not really opposites in African languages, like you find in English. You know, they're kind of made up. But if we have to find an opposite of Ubuntu, is Ubunja, which means the essence of being a dog. People will tell you, "Ubuntu lobo Ubunja." Only dogs behave in that manner. Human beings behave in a particular way. And I think what is unfortunately lacking in the way we interact with each other, whether it's at the United Nations or in various other corridors of power, is very far from Ubuntu, or the exact opposite of Ubuntu. Yeah?
Sonia, I have a question.
Yeah.
Victoria Greaves Williams. I'm an Aboriginal person from Australia now living in New York, and I'm really fascinated by what you've been talking about, Muzi. I've been very interested in Ubuntu because it's actually mirrored by values and principles in Aboriginal Australia. And I do quite a lot of work on Aboriginal philosophy, and which I've come to call the Australian Archive. And I was very interested to hear Akeem Mbembe start to talk about the African Archive. And I think when we really start to take the thinking, the philosophies, the values of Indigenous people around the world seriously, we're actually really going to be better prepared for the future. And in relation to you talking about thinking of what's going to be happening in 100 years' time, you know, the world is changing so rapidly almost on a daily basis. And, you know, the future is actually rushing in on us. And I think myself, and I'd like to know what you think, that Indigenous people around the world are much better equipped to deal with the future because of this grounding in basic principles and philosophies about cooperation, collaboration, and how, you know, we cannot exist without each other.
Well, we are all Indigenous, I think. So literally 40 kilometers from where I'm sitting is a place called the Cradle of Humankind, where the first human species was discovered. You know, their remains, and how everybody left this place and populated the rest of the world. And because of that, we are connected. If I may share the screen again to show you where I think we lost our way. Share the screen. So what then also happened was, as I said, this hyper-consumerism. I wonder if you can see this is a tombstone of somebody. His tombstone is a BMW, because it went on to say black man's wishes.
I can't see it, Muzi.
Can you not see it?
I think people can't see it yet.
Can they see it? No. Sonia?
No, it just says Muzi Kuzwayo has started screen sharing.
No, I don't see it either.
You don't see it either?
No.
Muzi, I'm sorry, could I just interrupt you? Because, you know, I think Africans need to get together with a group of Australian Aboriginal people to talk about the cradle of human beings.
Yeah.
You know, this is coming out of Western archaeological thought, you know, and, you know, we're told all the time that we came out of Africa and our stories are quite different. I think, you know, from my way of thinking, we're on difficult ground when we go into that. We need to be I think actually talking about Indigenous people in the world today as a much better place to start. I don't want to get caught up.
Okay, all right. Let's not.
I
Yeah.
also have another question for you in the
Okay.
chat, Muzi, when you
Can you
finish
see the
this.
screen? You still can't see the
Yes,
screen.
no, we can see it now. We can see
You
it
can
now.
So I wanted to say this. So what then happened was we became very consumer society. This is a tombstone, and it is a BMW tombstone. The guy, they made it up to look like a BMW. But while that is the case, and all the state money was being taken by all these guys who want BMWs and kinds of things, here are 3 African kids going up a hill to fetch water to drink. This is in 2022. We built a whole water project that helps them to find the water very close by. So now how much time are they spending trying to get the water? Now, it's things such as these, essentially, that have held us back. And what we did in this case, just to show you the kind of place where they were getting the water from. As you can see, the lady getting the water, drinking the water, and animals drowning in that kind of place. But if you give people hope, which is what we did here, I mean, after we put in the water project where the guys went to go and fetch the water, Wandile, this is the plot before they had water, they got water, and now he's planted his own garden and started selling his fresh produce. So what I think we actually need in marketing Ubuntu is also, it's going to give us our self-confidence, belief in ourselves, that it is not, that all these material things that come and go are actually not that important. And marketing is best placed to give us that. And which is why I'm so excited about what you guys are doing, because academia feeds the corporate with what is actually happening in the world. You are the GPS to say, this is where the global positioning, this is where we are, this is where we could be, this is where we should be turning, and this is where we're going. Because people in the corporate world are too busy trying to get the bottom line right. And they don't have the expertise nor the ability to draw from the world what you guys are finding out.
Okay, I'll share the question from the chat, which is from Mdinde. And she says, what kind of resistance have you had over the years when discussing issues of race, and how did you manage, apart from using idiomatic ways to make the message have impact instead of sounding angry or as if you relate to the subject so much as a Black person?
And that's a very long question, but I can tell you this. Anger is part of me. If you grew up in that environment, you're angry. You become angry. There were times in boardrooms where I shoved things down. Anger is part of me. There are people who don't want to be convinced. There are people who come into the room with their prejudice, and now we have to make a call on the boardroom whether we're going to use the client's budget to encourage this prejudice, or we're going to stop it right now. I always chose that route. But I'm the guy who got expelled from school twice. I got expelled at high school and I got expelled at university. So I'm probably not a good example. But the companies that I ran, they delivered the goods that we wanted. So it was there were a lot of things, I remember Pumi's, unfortunately, is off ill. She always reminds me of this. We were in a board meeting, in a strategy meeting, really. And I was saying, we're going this way. And this one person kept on saying, giving me reasons why we can't go that way. Eventually, I banged the table and started shouting. There were only 3 Black people in that room of about 11 people, so the 8 were white people. And eventually I walked out. I said, excuse me. I said, damn you, and I walked out of that. And her response, what she thought, she said, people had not experienced a Black person who's angry like that, who's their boss. So there are all of these little things that we were learning together. But I was the boss. I was responsible for making sure that the company, I was put in there to make sure that the company delivers in a South Africa that is non-racial. And maybe I could have done it better. I don't know. And if I did it wrongly, tough. I'm not going to say I'm sorry. I'm not that good. But the fact of the matter is, change, a very good example, my chemistry teacher, and I went to a all black school, by the way. My chemistry teacher, Mr. Mutake, used to say, you boil a kettle. And in that confusion of a kettle that is boiling, that is hot, that's when change happens. So change is not easy. It's never going to be easy. And anger is part of it, because we come from an environment that we had to get out of by hook or by crook.
I don't see any other questions, so you can continue. I don't
Judy
see
has a
anything else in
question.
the chat. Oh, Judy, okay.
Judy's hand.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Judy.
Okay. I study the experiences of Black advertising professionals in the various settings, corporate and otherwise. So can you just give a little more background on when you were associated with Ogilvy and Mather? You spoke to what your role was. If you can expand on that a little bit. And then at the end, can you give some sense of what the landscape is in terms of Black-owned advertising agencies in South Africa?
So at Ogilvy, I started as a media planner, as I said, and I went to a little bit into strategy, then became a copywriter because I wanted to write. At the time, they used to say Black people can't write English. So there were no Black copywriters, except who wrote often translations, a little bit of copy. There were some before me, but that was the thing. But I grew up reading Chinua Achebe. I grew up reading African writer series. So I was very Pan-Africanist in my way. And I remember writing an ad for Shell. And my white colleague next door to my cubicle, we both wrote for the same client, and we presented it to the client. This was in 1997, I think. Presented the work to the client. The client, who was white, bought my ad. And the guy lost his mind. It was around this time in South Africa, it's around maybe an hour earlier. He took off his clothes, literally, naked, went to the kitchen to get tea, broke down, because he couldn't understand a Black person writing in English, and English is not my first language, and the client buying my idea and not his. But the same thing was happening. I was kind of prepared for it because a few other friends in the law firms, same things were happening. A friend of mine runs a huge law firm here. He was the only one who passed the bar exam that year in their firm. All the other white kids failed. He was the only one who passed. And they couldn't understand it. Not that they couldn't stand it, they couldn't understand it because they'd grown up being told all this time that these guys don't know anything. And for the first time in '93, you've been confronted with something totally different. And then then I ran an agency called TBWA. And when I took the job, I had an interview with the founder, and when I took the job, I said, on one condition, I'll take the job on one condition. I said to him, it's a scar tissue. It's a scar, a scar reminds you of something, but doesn't hurt. And the scar in this case is that I'm Black. But that doesn't matter, it doesn't hurt. I'll take the job on one condition, that we're going to be the best agency in the world in 2010. And so I took the management team, to a strategy session in a place called Pezula in the Cape, very close to Cape Town. Pezula in Zulu means right top of the world. I had to leave the agency because I had a really good job. I had a business of my own and I got to be Nelson Mandela's grocer. So I went back to the Eastern Cape, I moved there. But the agency did become the number one agency in the world at Cairn in 2010. And Pumi, whom Sonia has met, brought in the team that achieved that. So, and the scar tissue was that as a Black person, I could drive an agency to be number one and not compete in the Blacks only race. I used to say to the guys, the youngsters who come and complain about race, I say, listen, about racism, there's nothing you can tell me about racism, absolutely nothing. But what I want you to remember is just look at the 100-meter Olympic race in 1900 and now. And I promise you, because of that, and I know I differ with a lot of people, there's no affirmative action there. And because there's no affirmative action there, we fight the hardest. I'm a beneficiary of affirmative action, I must say. I'm a beneficiary of Black economic empowerment, and I'm eternally grateful. But right now, I've got the highest unemployment in the world. You might have seen that. And before 7th of October, our unemployment was higher than Gaza and West Bank. So we've got to force our way out of today's tragedy. Sorry.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's very enlightening, and your historical context is also just extremely enlightening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Judy.
There's another question from the chat from JP James that says, your history of perceptions of Blacks is parallel to many vestigial perceptions of Black Americans in the US advertising industry. Curious how you got into the South African advertising industry and if perceptions of Blacks have evolved post-apartheid.
Oh, that's very academic. I don't understand it. But if I can take a stab on it, like when you're writing an exam and you go like, oh, I don't know what the answer here, I'm just taking a shot at it. Because I'm a Pan-Africanist, and maybe my views are in a minority these days, I must say. There are people that we have a saying that there are some managers who were raised in captivity. Black managers who were, I would never say this in public, but I do have said it in public, who were raised in captivity. We've got we've got a lot of lions here. So sometimes lions are raised on a game farm or in a zoo, and they've tried in the past to release them in the wild. Often those lions are dead within a week. A, because they can't hunt for themselves, because they were always fed. B, they can't fight. And the Kruger Park is a tough place. So one of the things there's an ad that says this, so it's not a Black thing. It says, no one ever got fired for hiring IBM. So if you hire me as Muzi with my own Black agency, and I say, let's go this way, and we make a boo-boo, as a Black executive, you're gonna get fired, right? So it's better for you not to hire the black ad agency and hire a white agency. You're gonna say, hey, subliminally you say, I got your people and they messed it up, If you hire Black people, and now we have the Zondo Commission on Corruption, is the Black executive getting something under the table? So when we started the foundation, we used to pitch a lot. When I was running Hunt Lascaris, our success record in pitches was over 80%. When I started my own agency, it was 100%. And then the idea of corruption came up, and Black executives lost their self-confidence. Suddenly, I look at Judy, and Judy's Black, Judy's corrupt. Emma wants to give me business. Is there something that Emma and I are talking about on the sidelines? You could see the slowdown in the economy. And what we hope to do with South Africa's promise is to give South Africans, all South Africans, and I'll tell you why, all South Africans, confidence and the belief in themselves. And how this came about, it was during COVID, and I was reading this book called, I think the title is End of an Empire. That how when you exclude a certain group of people, you end up excluding or putting pressure on the entire system. And in South Africa, what we need right now are entrepreneurs. But you can't just wave a wand and then you've got entrepreneurs. All you need is one or two entrepreneurs. They can hire 2,000 people between them. And if we can stop the emigration of South Africans of all races, because, you know, one thing about what I've seen with Black economic empowerment, it's for the few, the very, 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 very few who meet white people. There are people in greater parts of South Africa where I had a business in Sterkspruit. If we see a white person, we want to say like, are you lost? Can we help you out of here? But the whole system is geared towards doing business with white people. So we've got to bury, my dad wrote an article many years ago, before he died, an article that said there's still time to bury the ghost of Verwoerd. Verwoerd is the guy who enacted apartheid, was the prime minister, the white prime minister. So there is time to look at ourselves for who we are and not look at ourselves through the mirror of colonialism, to say that I can look at a white colleague and be equals, love each other, fight each other like friends will, like colleagues will, because we're fighting and passionate about our ideas on our way to greatness together. And I think that can only be achieved if we believe in ourselves, that if Emma shouts at me, it's got nothing to do with race, but with the fact that I put a glass of water on top of my computer. How could you do such a stupid thing, Muzi? Sorry, Emma. Not Emma, you're racist because I put a pink cup of cloth on my keyboard. Nobody does that.
Has a question.
Can I ask my question? Is it for
Go
me?
ahead, JP.
Yes. Oh, JP. Oh.
BP.
Oh, BP, I beg your pardon. Yes, I beg your pardon.
BP Bear.
BP, sorry.
Oh, can I? Okay, I'm gonna ask my question, and sorry if I'm taking the someone else. Stone. Yeah. So thank you very much, Muzi, for your very thought-provoking presentation. And the main thing, maybe I'm wrong, but the main thing I'm keeping from your talk is this idea of Ubuntu. And you said it. I think you said a few times that we need to market Ubuntu. And you know, I've lived in South Africa for many years, and I think this idea of Ubuntu is very present. Like South African talks a lot of Ubuntu. Often when you meet South African, they will talk about Ubuntu and explain you what is Ubuntu. But I'm kind of concerned when you say we need to market it, because you know, I've lived, as I said, I lived there for a few years, and there's talking about Ubuntu, and then there's living Ubuntu, there's making it happen. And to be honest, living in Grahamstown, living in Johannesburg, sometimes it's difficult to really feel what was that experiencing, what was that living of Ubuntu. And already a lot of South Africans talking about it, I had the feeling that it was already that big marketing thing that all South Africans had to be talking about it. But me as a foreigner, I was like, what is Ubuntu? How do I live Ubuntu? What is the difference between just collective feeling in France, in Togo, and in Johannesburg or in Grahamstown? So this is my concern of this idea of like, are we gonna market it further? Because I think it's already well marketed. I think the idea is like, how do we make it into the life of the people?
That's a great question, Guillaume. So Guillaume, the very first idiom that I learned at school, with us it was standard 1, that we after the 2 first, preschool, then standard 1, grade 3, I think they call it now. was isisu somhambi asinganganani singangenzo yenyoni. It's a story about a guy who's a visitor, umbata. And the saying means that the stomach of a guest is not big in any way. The stomach of a guest is as big as a bird's kidney. So if somebody's a guest, please give him food. Which is why colonialism, it was so easy to take over the land, because they were guests. Give them food, give them, and then in Swahili, they've got a saying, Mgeni sukunye, sukumbiri, sukutatu mpejembe. He's a visitor day 1, day 2, day 3, give him the hoe to go and work the fields, because he's not part of the family, right? Now, that's living Ubuntu. Before things became so expensive, there were always people, and I remember my grandmother used to do the same. They would cook enough to keep an extra plate in case there's a guest coming in the middle of the night. Now, obviously, once money gets involved, this becomes a very difficult thing to do and to live with, because now it's about money, it's about the ching-ching. Why we should talk about it all the time? Because a huge part of marketing is keeping it top of mind, is to remind your customers why they should buy your product. When they're in the supermarket, where there are 50,000 items on the shelves, they should remember your product. And I think the whole thing about Ubuntu as well is that while there are so many conflicting messages about individualism, about care only for yourself, don't worry about the neighbor's kid. When we grew up in an environment that says it's the village that raises a child, we have to remind people that indeed it is the village that raises a child. And Guillaume, this is very important to me, and I'll mention why. Is because my mother and dad were not, my mom and dad were not married. I was raised by a grandmother who cared, and a whole community that did things that they did not have to do. People who paid checks for you to send you to university. Even when my father, when he told me that, there'd be people when people would organize taxis for us to get in there so it's become cheaper. We host our teachers every year. We have a lunch for them just to thank them, our high school teachers, Mike Decker and I, because they went the extra mile to make sure that we got an education, even though they were not our own parents. They made sure they got bursaries for us. They spoke to people for us to get money for the whole school. So Ubuntu has to be marketed just as Lux or Unilever has to remind people all the time to buy that one as opposed to the competitor.
Great. Do we have any other questions? I'm not seeing one. I know you still have slides to go through, Muzi.
No, that's fine.
We have about 7 minutes. We have
that's
other
fine.
questions.
I can take some more questions. I've kind of basically I've covered them. I wanted to talk about the stuff that we're doing for water, and the whole thing, what I saw, as I said, in the corporate, is how marketers lost their confidence, how they started fearing, how they started being scared of approving great ideas, of making calls. I think that's why South Africa is where it is today.
How about the impact of China? How about the impact of China? So we are all hearing about how China's coming in with their Belt and Road and taking the material from Africa and not really contributing. Are they treating us better financially as consumers?
That's a great question. So China, it's not the first time China is invested in Africa. They first invested in 1972 in what was then Rhodesia. So, there was Zambia and now Zimbabwe. And Rhodesia decided what they called the UDI, Unilateral Declaration of Independence. So what they did was they got all the trains. One was Northern Rhodesia and other one was Rhodesia, South Rhodesia, or just Rhodesia. When all the trains were in Rhodesia, they declared the UDI, and Zambia was left with no trains and therefore could not take any of its minerals to the port in Tanzania. They had to fly copper on helicopters to get them to Tanzania. And Mao Zedong invested something like 2 billion or 20 billion, I can't remember the exact number, dollars in 1972, and the line still exists called the Tazara line, Tanzania and Zambia line. That's what it's called, Tazara. So they have always interacted. They pulled out of South Africa because of apartheid. And they supported the Pan-Africanist Congress. They supported ZANU, PF, or ZANU at the time, not just ZANU, PF, the Zimbabwe African People's Union, and they gave arms to Zimbabwe African National Liberation Army, ZANLA. So it's nothing new. They have been in China, literally investing in China for a lot longer than the West. They were selling beads off the coast of Mozambique before the Portuguese got there. So they've always been here. They know the continent well.
A question.
But how are they treating? How are they treating? Are they treating Africans well? Like, you know, like is it fair trade? Is it fair exchange? Is it?
I don't think it's any worse than the West. But I think what's when I got to, I mean, in Kenya, they put up a line between Nairobi and Mombasa, you know, and people see things. You know what? How I put it, how I see it. South Africa basically has been trading with the West and the Russians before, and now and the Chinese now, because they've got more money, they're investing a lot more. And South Africa is now, the largest trading partner for South Africa is with China because of our minerals. They've got the Chinese bank here. I don't think anybody could do worse than the West. The one thing that, okay, sorry, Sania.
No, I had a question about, you were talking about the marketing of Ubuntu. And so you really have been emphasizing the social impact of marketing and the social use of marketing. But at the same time, as you talk about the high unemployment rate and the other issues, is the industry ready to focus on issues of nation building and the social impact of marketing when sort of the other their basic corporate activities are being challenged in some way? I'm not sure if that kind of gets
I think I understand that. Sonia, that's a very important question. My view is that marketing works best in an entrepreneurial world where the founders are running the businesses. And because that is gone and everybody is working for an organization that they found in existence, marketing has lost its great significance. So our most successful campaigns at all time were the ones that looked at a citizen instead of a consumer. We did that with Old Mutual. We did that with Volkswagen. Like I said, BMW did that in Germany because it is a part of society. It's not an extractive relationship where I take your money and you may get a product that works today or not. But if it's important to you as a person, but because a lot of managers, and I say this around the world, were raised in captivity. They've never had to go and hunt for themselves. They were raised in corporate captivity. They have believed the lie that the way to getting the bottom line is by being this hard-nosed businessman. But people who are very philanthropic, like Raymond Ackerman here in South Africa, their companies have done exceptionally well in the past. And when the corporate guys come in, they lose it all. Because they lose Ubuntu, the essence of being a human being and why you are a citizen before you're a consumer.
Thank you. That's a Great summary. We're at 11:59. We might have time for one more question. If anyone has a burning question, jump on right now. One. Anyone?
Looks like there's a follow-up question in the chat. Can capitalism be modified to accommodate indigenous values?
Well, let's think about this, man. You know, the book, Adam Smith's book, I think when it was released, when it was published, it's the same year that America was proclaimed. So the world has changed so much. I think it was Emma or Judy who was talking about how the world has changed. And we still want to hold on to those tenets when capitalism was still based on slavery. On the other hand, when Karl Marx wrote Das Kapital, it was something like 40 years before the first car was manufactured. Now cars are being manufactured by robots. What's important is for us to think of new systems that are going to take us forward. So my answer is we don't look at capitalism or socialism because they have failed to give us the answers. We have all these great academics and intelligent people. We must develop a new system. We can't rely on a tenet that was written the year that America was, I think it was 1776. Am I correct? Something like that. The book was published when America was promulgated as a state. It's too old.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Muzi. Does anyone have any closing remarks before we end this provocative discussion? Going once. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, Muzi, for your time and sharing your expertise with us. We will eventually put the recording on the RIM website, and check out the RIM website for other events in our series. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you, Sonia, and thank you, Muzi.
Thank you, Veronica. Thank you all for coming.
Been great.
Gives us a lot to think about. Each month, I think we'll get more and more sort of different perspectives to think about.
Just great to see
Are we
Muzi.
taking next month off? I remember we had a
Yes.
summer break planned, right?
Yeah, the next one will be in August.
All right, great job.
Thanks.
See you all. Hey, Judy.
Bye.
You got frozen a little bit. I like to stay till the very end. On any Zoom, even when it's not my Zoom. I'm like, I want to know what else is going on. Hey, Allison. Hi, Dion.
It was really nice to see Tracy.
Yeah, she was on there too. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've exchanged details so we can reconnect.
Oh, people were chatting on the side. I think some people still have their Zoom on and they like have walked away from their desk. I do that too. Are you there, Allison? Have you ever met Allison, Veronica, my friend that I go to New Orleans Jazz Fest?
Yes, I recognize the name from the Jazz Fest that you always go to.
But she must be doing something else.
Yeah, I don't know whether I've met her. Have I met her in Chicago?
You might have. Well, no, I don't think she lived in Chicago at that time. I'm trying to.
Does she live in DC?
No, she lives in Evanston now.
Okay.